Today I'm going to be talking about the element of fire in the movement alchemy system that I've developed. Fire relates to physically the core, so the core musculature, but it goes much deeper than that, as I'll explain, because without certain deeper things this becomes absolutely redundant. First things first, fire has three components to it that I've been able to gather in terms of how it relates to movement. You got warmth, load dissipation and transfer, and metabolic fire. Now all these three interweave together. So we have an internal desire for warmth, to feel warm, to feel satiated, to feel comfortable, right? And we may use a physical external fire for that, right? So that's also where the fire element comes into this. But also, in order to maintain that warmth, we have to dissipate and transfer load in order to feed our metabolic fire. So you start to feel internally cold. That prompts you to get up, move, use your physical core, right? So you have an internal desire from the soul to stay alive, which means that you are going to want to eat. So when you feel cold, that will make you get up, use your physical core to walk over and grab some food, which when you eat it feeds your metabolic fire, which then in turn supports thermogenesis of the body, keeping you overall warm, right? So without the desire to live, the core becomes redundant. So this physical core is only an externalization of something much more internal and deep. Now, physically speaking, the core drives all movements, even walking. So typically in universities, now I haven't been in university, but my understanding of it is that you guys get taught that the legs drive the gait pattern. So we're basically sitting atop of two grounded structures, i.e. the legs, and we move from the legs. It's actually not the case, and you can know this by observing people who have no legs and no arms, because they're still able to do rotational movements in the spine, and that means that they're able to do what's called imbibition. Ambulation, which is like on the ground, like a weird serpent-like motion, right? So if someone without arms and legs is able to be upright and move on their spine and hips, that means that walking doesn't come from the legs, so it drives from the core out. So what this means is when you take a step, that load comes up this leg here, as you pretty much are in a controlled fall, so foot comes forward, that becomes a controlled fall there, that shortens this fascial sling, which we'll get to in the next video. So that load's there, that load comes up through the core, up here, and then as I propel forward, the back muscles here, the load comes up the back, propels me forward, so it goes through the core, and then back down the back here. And then with the arm swing, it transfers to the other side. Does that make sense? So the core is basically a means to move energy to the limbs, from limb to limb and between limbs and between body parts. If that load wasn't dissipated by the core, when you lift your arm up, your body would fall forward, right? Because the weight of that would be so much that your spine would collapse. Now when it comes to other things, like for example, steel mace, right, so first we were talking about a load in a more closed chain environment with the feet on the ground, then we're going to talk about a load in a more open chain environment. So as this comes back, right, this load is putting a stretch on this side of the body. That load has to go through the core, transfers to this side, so that I can then carry it over. Like so. Now, if you have too much fire, what you'll do is you'll burn out your joints. So, say for example, you have too much fire but no water to cool it down, you may, for example, go to throw a ball, and if the core's not working, because the core's not working in order to dissipate and transfer the load from the leg to the hand, the leg to the core to the shoulder, all the way to the hand to throw, because the core is imbalanced, you will have to overcompensate with the limbs. So it'll go leg, core will get locked up, and you'll overcompensate with the shoulder, and then you'll lock your shoulder out basically. Now this also applies metaphysically. So think of throwing a ball like having a target and you're thinking, I'm gonna hit that. So if you don't have the core tone in your being directing to what you actually want, when you go to throw it, metaphysically, when you go to throw your intent at something that you want, if the core is not integrated, you will overcompensate in the extremities and not the core. So you'll overcompensate in the material aspects where you should be having more focus and energy in the immaterial aspects, i.e. intent is something immaterial. You can't touch my intent to throw a ball at something, but you can touch the ball that I'm throwing. You know what I mean? Yeah. Fire element, obviously if your breathing is off, fire is fed by oxygen, right? So the muscles in the core and the whole body are fed by oxygen. Each cell has a hemoglobin, which oxygen attaches to it, creates an electrical charge, etc., etc. So if your breathing's off, what it's going to do is you're not going to have enough electricity in the body in order to drive that core. Key example of this is from the other video I did. If you try to throw a ball in an inverted breathing pattern, so normally it would be, you did that opposite, so it disrupts motor sequencing and mechanical efficiency. So if I held my breath, that would mean there's nowhere for it to go, because the breathing out, the actually activates the core and helps the core to drive tension and to keep tone and stiffness in the spine. So if you hold your breath, you can't always do that, and if there's no breath, you won't be able to do that, right? Now without earth, without a stable foundation, if you try to throw and you don't have stable footing, as soon as you throw, you might lose your footing and collapse. So that's how the earth element needs to be integrated. If you have all fire and breath, but you're not fully grounded on the earth that's actually supporting you while you're moving, then you're going to burn out, and that would be pretty much result in inflammation in the joints, because that fire isn't being managed and it's accumulating in the weak points. Yeah, I think that's it for now. I've just decided just randomly to do this video. If I've missed anything, sorry. Yeah, I'll be back next time with the water element. I hope this helps. Please leave any questions, comments. Yeah.